This is again a controlled adaptive management study where we identify a fire shed, the adjacent fire sheds that weren't going to be treated to Last Chance, where we put in a network. We did the same thing in Last Chance. We measured them before. All of our plots, our fuels, our tree measurements, water, owl habitat, all that stuff was measured before. Then the treatments came in, and then we did everything again. We measured them again. So we have a before and after design to our projects. The wrinkle here is that as we were finishing our treatments last year, literally as we were finishing, the American fire was bearing down on us, and we just literally finished or got most of the plots done before the fire came through some of our plots. So that technically is the end of SNAP. The American fire is not part of the actual study, but it's a great opportunity because the fire burned through two fire sheds, one that didn't have, one of the controls that had no treatments, and then one of the fire sheds that did have treatments, the one we're in right now. And so we've worked with the National Science Foundation and the American River Ranger District to come out there, and we're calling it we have a RAPID award, which is, just as it sounds, very quick money to come out and just capture the immediate data we need to understand what's going on before it's lost. And so we're coming out literally ahead of the loggers to remeasure the plots that were in the American River fire and be able to measure the impact of the fire in and out of the splat treated area, so we can actually test some of the work we did. And so we're planning on coming back and remeasuring the plots that we did last year that have been in the American River fire.
The American fire started in the beginning of August. The final perimeter where they eventually stopped was about the second to third week in August, where it quit growing. It started in the North Fork of the Middle Fork of the American River, about mid-slope. Very nasty place to fight fire. It came out of there and immediately started doing its thing in these canyons. All right. The names of the canyons are very telling. First of all, the American fire area hasn't burned historically since the beginning of the last century. So we have 100+ years of fuel buildup. There's been some logging associated with that, some fuels treatments here and there, but on the whole, it was 100 years of fuel accumulation and tree growth. We had our best opportunity to contain this fire. They talked with the district folks, and the district folks said, hey look, we just finished this fuels reduction treatment in this Last Chance area. What do you say we make that part of our containment efforts? Because they were going to go all the way down to Mosquito Ridge Road and encompass, I would say, a third again the perimeter in the area of the fire. That's all they could come up with. They didn't realize, they didn't know that we had this Last Chance thing in place. They looked at it, we talked together, they bought it. The backfiring occurred in a kind of a clockwise fashion, starting up here, going downhill, right through the middle of the Last Chance treatment areas, and then it finally wound up down in a place called Pacific Slab Mine area. All right, remember, prescribed burning is done on the firefighters' terms. So it's done in a time and a place that's conducive to containing the fire. A lot of it was done at night. All right, there was a lot of prep work going on ahead of time. We had several days to get this area ready. So in addition to the fuel treatments, they took out a lot of the brush along the side of the road. They piled it over on the opposite side. Fire came through, we burned through. All right, down this way in the wildfire area, eventually those two fires met.
I'm sure all of you noticed the difference in the litter, the floor litter. The last stop was fairly heavy, snappy, crunchy, poppy. Here it's a lot less. And it gets back to one of the earlier comments on the first stop that after the ground-based logging operations, we do have a duct litter. That heavy equipment machinery can't handle a lot of this small stuff, and it's not intended to remove all this stuff and litter. So this is what we expected to have at the end of the treatment.
This looks to me, and I'm not an expert in trees, but this looks less damaged to me. Is that because of the species? Is it because of the treatment?
For whatever reason, we have more different vegetation here. We have more seedlings and saplings, some pole conifer in the background. I'm not sure what that means in terms of the back burning that I guess it was more resilient to the fire behavior. Larry?
Position. We're in a mixed conifer forest here, and a lot of it could be just the time of day and when and how this burned, what the weather was doing. You know, we don't have that level of detail to know. So,
A lot of variables.
yeah. That has some pros and cons. Sometimes you get more damage to the residual stand, but I've also gone out and seen examples where they've been very successful. And the other thing is, you know, it's a money factor, but having unmerchable material yarded up, that can happen. We don't have funding for that typically. And then the other avenue that we really are interested in pursuing is finding ways to mitigate having equipment on steeper slopes so that we can treat more of our landscape with ground-based equipment and avoid the extra expense.
Using ground-based equipment on steeper slopes. Currently, we're limited by our forest plan to about a 30% slope maximum where we use ground-based equipment. We can use in locations where we've got short pitches or other, we can have other mitigating circumstances. We can actually go a little bit steeper. We can go to about 35%.
Are a game changer for a few things. I mean, California's been measuring the water balance, or not water balance, but indexes of snow and precipitation and so forth for decades to century using technology developed decades to century ago, and we have the ability to do much better for modest cost and reduce the uncertainty in forecasts on multiple time scales for anywhere from a day to week or longer forecasts of water. We have the ability to verify the impacts of forest management. I think that's an unprecedented opportunity because when we calibrate these models, we don't just put a bunch of data in the front end and match stream flow at the other end. We have snowpack data to match. We have soil moisture data to match. We have evapotranspiration data to match. You're basically closing the water balance within your model instead of just having a black box between precipitation and stream flow. So I really think it is a new generation of more certainty in water data. Now, will that result in better decisions? Well, there's still the human factor there.
There are a number of owl territories, kind of, I think maybe 5 or 6 around the periphery of the last chance treatments that were impacted by the fire last fall. And I think maybe, what we have 4 or 5? Maybe 5 territories that were affected by the fire. And Sheila will tell you a little bit more about how those territories are doing this year as far as we know.
Or out of those 5 territories that weren't, let's see, 3 of those, well, 2 of those were within the perimeter of the burn, and 3 were just on the periphery where maybe the fire didn't actually go through the nest stand. But out of those 5, 3 are nesting, and the other one is occupied by a new female. She's a subadult, which might explain why she's not nesting. We have our only non-nesters this year are occupied with subadult birds. So, yeah, is that? And our other, well, actually, this year, counting all of our study areas, it's a really good nesting year for the owls. It seems to be pretty high survival after such a fairly mild winter. We have 27 nests, counting all of our study area, and maybe 2 of those have failed, we think. And at one point we had 100% of our adult pairs that we detected were nesting this year.
And Sheila, how does that compare to most years? You know, this year compared to other years?
Oh, most years, so if we had 27, most years out of the sites we've been to, maybe 10. Well, actually, one of the sites, I was kind of surprised that there was a pair there. I heard that from the Forest Service crew, found a pair there, and we went in and found them nesting in a really high intensity burn. So I was kind of surprised by that. And then, let's see. The other pairs, they weren't really, within the nest stand, the two other nesting pairs, the nest stand didn't burn. So I wasn't really surprised that they were there nesting.
About the effect of fire on owls. And right now we know from studies that there's high survival, good reproduction following low intensity fires over broad scales. I mean, New Mexico, Arizona, Southern California, and the northern spotted owl, as well as Sierra Nevada. As far as high intensity fires, there's one study that showed that birds continue to use these sites for foraging. But the question is, for nesting, sometimes a bird like this pair will be there for 1 or 2 or 3 years, and then they might disappear. But there's not enough information right now that has been analyzed to say what is the long-term occupancy of these birds in high-intensity fires. What we do know from coring of old-growth stands where owls nest is that the actual little grove where they usually nest is often a residual of some fire or some stand replacing event long ago. So